When we build, let us think that we build forever. Let it not be for present delight, nor for present use alone. Let it be such work as our descendants will thank us for. And let us think, as we lay stone on stone, that a time is to come when those stones will be held sacred because our hands have touched them. And that men will say as they look upon the labor and wrought substance of them, "See, this our fathers did for us." John Ruskin. "2018 has seen the end of a massive 5-year, multi-million-dollar restoration of the magnificent West Block of the Canadian Parliament buildings, high above the powerful Ottawa River on the edge of the Canadian Shield. As large a stone project as there is anywhere in the world. It is a bigger job than the cathedrals of Europe. At its height of intensity, over 200 trained stonemasons and apprentices worked daily on this restoration, and they came from all over the world. The stonework was undertaken by RJW Jem Campbell and spearheaded by RJW President Robert John Watt, generally known as Bobby. Bobby is a big man with a big personality. It is surprising to hear him wielding a soft Scottish voice when he sings his beautiful music and wraps his stonemason hands around the neck of his custom-made Laskin guitar. The Isle of Arran lies in the Clyde estuary below Glasgow on the western edge of Scotland. The island has been called Scotland in miniature because it embraces rocky and sandy coastlines, mountains in the north, prehistoric stone monuments, 3 castles, and a renowned whiskey distillery. Lovely villages cling to the coasts, and the interior is wild highland.
Now, Bob Logan in 1890, when he was a young man at 21, built a bridge across the Blackwater River, which is on the other side of the island from us, where my father was born, actually, in the village where my father was born. And the bridge is still standing today. It has never seen a repointing job.
Bobby worked on the spectacular Brodick Castle when he was young, and he still amazes the local tourist guides when he shows up with such a detailed knowledge of the wonderful building. A famous geological formation, Hutton's Unconformity, draws geologists from all over the world in the summer months. This insight was instrumental in launching Darwin's theory of evolution. Every summer, Arran is awash with geologists studying the unconformity. Bobby Watt was born on the Isle of Arran in 1954. His father, Jack, was a piper in the 2nd Battalion Seaforth Highlanders in Burma from 1944 to 1946, and was also a pretty good accordion player. His mum, Mary McKinney, comes from a very musical family.
So you're how old when you started to get interested in this? 15 or so?
Yeah, well, I left school before I'd completed my high school, my O-levels. I left school at 15. The headmaster and I didn't get along. So I'd been playing in a band, my first band when I learned to play guitar, playing in the band in high school. And the learning took the second fiddle. To playing in a band, and the headmaster and I had a falling out of no small import, and he says you should find yourself a job, and so I ended up at home He didn't expel me exactly, but it was a mutual agreement that I was doing no good at school. So I ended up at home, and I had this idea that I'd maybe become a mechanic, and because I was always interested in cars. My dad and I used to fix our own cars. His cars, we'd fix them ourselves.
Because of his outsized personality, he parted ways with the schooling system as soon as he got his high school leaving certificate, and found a new way of life apprenticing to local master stonemasons. Bobby apprenticed under two local stonemaster's, John Thompson and Jock Kerr. A prime learning opportunity was the ongoing restoration of Brodick Castle, which overlooks the bay and village.
Yeah, you had two mentors, or two people that...
Yeah, my boss, John Thompson, was a remarkable stonemason. He was one of the youngest stonemasons, foreman stonemasons, on a huge project in Scotland to move a church. And he took it down stone by stone and moved it a few miles and then rebuilt it. And he was one of the youngest guys on that site, and he taught me an immense amount about what stonework is and how it was done and how best to handle it. And I worked on so he was my boss, and then I worked on a daily basis with a man called Jock Kerr, who and Jock had born and brought up on the island, and he'd served his time alongside the same guy that John Thompson had served his time with, Bob Logan. And Jock went away to work in England and became a restoration mason for one of the dukes down in England. I believe the Duke of Gloucester or someone in central England like that. And he ended up spending most of his career repairing old buildings and modifying them. And so he had an immense knowledge of how to make things work and how to make sweetness come out of make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. So I spent my daily time with Jock Kerr, and he was a hell of a man for practical jokes, and he was quite a rough diamond in a number of ways, but he was an amazing stonemason.
So why leave this idyllic little island in the sea?
Well, we had been away on holiday in Spain and had a wonderful time. That was the first time out of Scotland. Had a wonderful time there, and on our way back, we were talking about how nice it was to be able to go places like that, and how much easier it would be if we lived in England, for instance. And we came back, and it was summertime on Arran, and there was a chap in the pub that Alison's dad worked in, and he had been in Canada for a few years. And he was telling me, he was standing at the bar just purely by chance talking. I knew him and his family very well. And he was telling me about this friend of his who played with the Toronto Scottish Rugby Club, who needed a mason because they had all this stone that had arrived from Carrara in Italy. And although they were managing to put it on the walls, nobody had any idea how to set out the steps, which were, of course, there's a bunch of rules for setting out steps. These guys, I don't know why they didn't know how to do it, but anyway, the offer was there for me to go and spend the summer in Canada to help them build these steps. And I said, sure, that sounds like a plan, And so I went home to Alison, and I said, how do you fancy a summer in Canada? Be kind of cool. And of course, we were feeling that pretty worldly wise, and so we went and applied to Canada House in Glasgow to get. We originally thought, maybe a couple of years, do some stuff, and then come back home. So we originally went up for a work permit, and the guy was persuading us, no, you need landed immigrant status to do that, and yada, yada, yada. So we went the landed immigrant status route. Next thing we know, we're in Canada.
The decision to emigrate to Canada was at first a temporary one.
How did I find myself a policeman? We arrived in Canada in August 1975, and of course I'd been headhunted, asked to come and work for this project in downtown Toronto, and things were going great. And until about the November and the union decided they were going to go on strike, and the strike was on. And there was another Scottish guy in the union at the time, and he said to me, "You're the right size, you've got the right accent. If you go up the street about 500 yards, you'll bump into Toronto Police Headquarters." And I had no intention of ever becoming a policeman. When I joined the police and got through training, and they sent me to 53 Division at Yonge and Eglinton, which was a really great place to work. They called it the Country Club, because we were north of downtown, and we had all the rich areas, Forest Hill and Bridle Path, and all these places came under our purview, Lawrence Park. So it was a pretty sedate place to be a policeman. Then one day this notice came to the station that they were looking for divers for the underwater search and recovery team for the harbour. The Toronto Police had just taken over the Toronto Harbour Police, so I applied and was accepted, and we spent the last 4 years of my 10 years in the Harbour Police, which was great, being a police diver, and which wasn't so great, but it was a nice place to be, and on hot summer's days. Very bad place to be in November when a yacht that had left Niagara Falls heading for Toronto didn't make it, and you were out in the middle of the lake looking for it. But exciting and rewarding work. But by 1986, I'd done so many body recoveries, including kids, it was getting to me.
Bobby found opportunities everywhere. He found that his exceptional care and knowledge kept him in demand as a builder and as a teacher. He quickly formed a crack crew of masons which exemplified quality and excellence. Now Bobby had a family and a full life in Canada. RJW Stonemasons was founded in 1987 and enjoyed continuous growth, providing stonemasonry services to the government as well as the industrial and residential construction sectors. Services included historic masonry restoration, construction and conservation, stone carving and supply, as well as training. In the mid-1990s, RJW Stonemasons was relocated from Whitby, Ontario to Ottawa in order to help address the increasing demand for qualified stonemasons in the region. Participating in the massive restoration works planned for the parliamentary precinct and establishing a training program on the Centre Block South Facade project were also key factors in the decision to relocate. Growth continued following the relocation, resulting in the establishment of a large blade stone cutting facility in Ottawa in 2000. This further broadened the range of services available and provided the capacity to serve clients outside of Canada. In the fall of 2009, RJW Stonemasons outgrew its facilities and built a new 20,000 square foot state-of-the-art shop. This provided significant capacity gains, but also necessitated the search for a suitable partner in order to provide the resources needed to increase development and expand geographic coverage. RJW Stonemasons worked with Jem Campbell on the Victoria Memorial Museum building with a very triumphant outcome. Completed in late 2010, this project and the success of the end product prompted partnership consideration between the two companies, culminating in early 2011 with the formation of a partnership between RJW Stonemasons and Jem Campbell Terrazzo and Tile Incorporated. The two companies joined together for 6 years to carry out the West Block project. Upon its completion in 2017, RJW Stonemasons went back to doing projects on their own, from Calgary City Hall in the west to Province House in Charlottetown, PEI, in the east. RJW is also working on many of the locks on the Rideau Canal system and continuing work within the parliamentary precinct in Ottawa, including the brand new Visitor Welcome Centre on Parliament Hill, the first new building constructed on the hill in over 112 years. RJW Stonemasons continues to fulfill its commitment to give the past a future.
So what does the next 10 years look like for you, Bobby?
Well, the easy answer is more of the same. We're working at the moment in Calgary City Hall with the crew out there. We're working in Prince Edward Island on Province House, which is of course where the whole country began, and it's a wonderful building and a wonderful job. So we have crews spread across the country, and we're still working in little bits in the enabling projects for the centre block, which is the next big Parliament Hill project to come out probably in 2020. And that'll be another 10 years worth of work. So I think that the team we've assembled over the years, from even the growth of my own sons into their shoes over the years, has been great to watch. But the team that we assembled, from our general superintendent, the guy who's really at the top of the tree, of the employees, and our project managers, our project coordinators, our apprentices, our shop guys, the guys that do the carving, the team is awesome, and I think they're capable of doing anything, and I know they're capable of doing anything, and doing it with a smile on their face. I think I'd like to keep in the game as much as I can. I've got this thought about going in from 10 to 2 on Tuesdays and Thursdays at some point. We'll call it the 4T week. So that I'm keeping my hand in. I don't think I'll ever retire fully. I can't see it. I love the game too much. Even the pricing, even when we're under the gun to get a price submitted, the day that we do submit the price is full of excitement, because you're trying to be the lowest price without leaving too much money on the table, which is the big secret. So it's great to get $1 million job and only leave $100 on the table, which means that you're $100 less than the next guy. And that part is a lot of fun too. So I'd like to think that we're going to manage to, and hopefully I'll have the health and strength to keep going for the next 10 years. This month actually is 49 years. So next January it'll be 50 years in this business, with my brief stint as a Toronto policeman, but taken out of that. But it's a long time, but I think I can handle more. I'd like to handle more. We've just started a new company called Glen Rosa Conservation, which is set up to take over some of the finer work and some of the consulting work that big clients need on their buildings. So we can provide a full service. We can go in there and with our conservators and decide what the building needs, and get that approved, and then we can actually do the work and finish it up, and then do the reports at the end of it. So it's an exciting branch off from the traditional masonry company.
Kind of a mobile strike force.
Absolutely, yeah.
So then I wanted to I thought I'd be a motor mechanic, because I enjoyed tinkering about with our old Morris Minor and Mini Cooper, and changing engines and stuff. So I thought maybe I'll be a motor mechanic. But my uncle Will, who lived around the corner, says, don't. He says, look at my hands. He says, 30 years as a motor mechanic, my hands are filthy. It's before the days of these blue plastic gloves they all wear nowadays. He said, don't be a motor mechanic. So I had a pal at school, a guy called Ian Thompson, and his father ran a stonemasonry company on the island. And I thought, well, maybe that'd be kind of nice. So my father made some discreet inquiries, and he came in to me one Saturday morning. He says, I was talking to John Thompson, he says, and he's looking for an apprentice. And I said, wow. I said, I was just talking to Ian about that last week. He says, well, you can start on Monday morning. So on the Monday morning, you arrive at the pier. Everybody in Arran gets picked up at the local jetty, the pier closest to the water. It's on an island 20 miles by 12. Beautiful place. 3,000 foot high range of mountains on the north end, and rolling hills on the south end. Beautiful sandy beaches. But the pier is the focal point of each of the villages. Down to the pier on the Monday morning, and I'm expecting to go somewhere else on the island to work. And he says, this is John Thompson, my boss. He says, you're going to work right there at the end of the pier. And at the end of the pier was a little coastal vessel, a puffer we called them, steam engines. And it had 225,000 bricks in it.
He says, here's your first job, son. You're going to have to get in that boat and and empty it. And there was another young fellow there who was the son of one of the lighthouse keepers, and him and I had both started that day, and this was both times we'd never seen. I knew my father used to work in these boats, but I'd never been in one in my life, and there were hundreds, thousands, 200 and something thousand bricks in this boat, and you had to take them two at a time, put them in a bucket, and have that big bucket filled by the time the second bucket came down, so that the whole thing was moving constantly, and you had to work at the speed of the buckets being dumped on the quayside above and in the truck above. You'd get a brief respite while they were shifting the trucks around, but it was back-breaking labour, and it took us all week to empty these bricks, and our fingers were shredded. And one of the old guys in the boat had cut up a piece of rubber inner tube from a tyre to put in our hands with holes in it, so that it would protect our palms of our hands at least, if not the fingertips. But we were completely shattered. Two of us, I was still before my 16th birthday. Mike was just over 16. So by the end of the week, John come down the pier with his hands in his pockets, and he brought our paychecks, our pay stubs, which are little brown envelopes. £3, 3 shillings and threepence, I remember, was my very first pay.
And I said to John, he's giving me my pay packet. I said to John, I says, my goodness, I says, that was really hard. I wasn't really complaining, but John, that was really hard. He said, don't worry about it, he says. You're going to Lumlash on Monday. Different place altogether, next village, over the hill, next village. Great, thanks a bunch. Picked me up on Monday, took me to Lumlash. There was another boat sitting at the end of the pier. Another 225,000 bricks. And I went, Jesus. We had two choices, and John's standing there looking at me. And I said, okay. Down the end of the pier, into the boat, another week. He told me years later that if I hadn't walked down that pier, that would have been done. No apprenticeship.
Pretty special time to be in, but when we got the West Block project, it was a 2-envelope system, and Canada and America are pretty well the only places in the world that still operate mostly on this lowest price gets the job. And the 2-envelope system was introduced by the general contractor at the West Block to try and make sure that there would be none of the shenanigans that go on with the lowest price system. And by that, I mean that there's all sorts of avenues for abuse when you make the lowest price the guy that gets the job.
Bobby, if you had never left Ireland 50 years ago, almost 50 years, how would your life have been different?
Well, I don't think it would have been as exciting. I mean, I would have probably kept working for John Thompson. He was a great boss, and he was a great mason, great stonemason, and he taught me an awful lot. I still think of the guy often. I mean, every single week I'll think about something he did or said that set me on the path, and I was one of his apprentices. I think he had in his whole career he only had maybe 6 or 7 apprentices, and here am I 50 years later, numbering hundreds of guys and women that have come through the company, either in whole or in part during their apprenticeship travels. And that's not counting the people that I trained at the Guild Institute or at Durham College or at the Interior Masonry Training Centre, or all these training seminars from Seattle to New York. So many people have had the benefit of John Thompson's wisdom. I think that's a remarkable thing.
Very much a stone tossed in the pond.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And it's difficult to imagine how much influence I've had on all of these people. I mean, some of them obviously had a good experience being with us. Some of them maybe not such a great experience. I do know that there are many people that because of reduction in work volume that have left the company that I would dearly love to have come back when the work escalates again, because we just had so many good, talented people come through. I think that had I stayed in Ireland, I maybe not have this grey hair. I mean, the life I've led has been full of troubles and strifes. I often say that I feel as if I've lived a Ken Follett novel, because there's been betrayals and backstabbing and nefarious doings along the way, but there's also been some great joys and pleasures and high points and working on Rideau Hall with 3 different governors general, for instance, and on Parliament Hill with 4 or 5 different prime ministers, and meeting them all in the way and being able to discuss what we do with them, so they get a better understanding of what's happening around them. And I think that's a good thing too. And my work with the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum also gives me a lot of contact with kids. I'm part of the outreach committee, so I'll go to high schools and talk to kids about how come their parents are so determined to get them into university to become perhaps a holder of a degree that won't get them a job. You know, they'll still be working at Canadian Tire or McDonald's. Whereas if they start in an apprenticeship, then they start getting paid as soon as they walk in the door on the first day. So how has my life changed? I think my life has been immeasurably more rich because I left Arran. I still have that as my anchor, so always will be. The name of the conservation company, Glen Rosa Conservation, is testament to that. I go back as often as I can, and once a year generally. Sometimes it's every couple of years, but we try and make it once a year for a wee visit. And I think that route will never go away. And I think that moving forward here now, with all our family, with kids of their own, our life will get quieter and more sedate, I think. But as long as I can still be a part of what goes on and maybe set the first stone or the last stone or help with the pricing or help with the direction the company's taken, then I'll be a happy man. And whatever time's left to me, I'll use it wisely, as I hope I've done all the time I've had before.
And I'm just going to ask you if there's anything you separately want to say to sum up this series, or looking back, or maybe you don't even want to do that.
No, this little series of videos, Doug, has given me a great deal of pleasure. And why? Because it's left something that people can tangibly look at and get a real understanding of what it is that stonemasons do and how they operate and how they get trained and how exciting and diverse the job can be. So I think, if nothing else, these 12 videos have given an opportunity for people to look into our world without actually having to get their hands dirty. And it's been a great thing. And I know for a fact that the apprenticeship video is shown time and time and time again. I think it's episode 2, The Apprentice. And it's been shown time and time and time again in schools all over Canada. And we're leaving something behind. And personally, I want to thank you for that. It's been great to work with you.
It's been great fun.